the Eastern U.S. weather forum. And I'm going to give you an update on what I believe could go on in the pattern. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take a look mostly here at the 18Z GFS, just to illustrate a point. Now when I did my last update, when I was doing the video for, well, the first update actually, where I was making the first guess for, it didn't pan out. I will admit that was pretty much a busted forecast in our neck of the woods here in the Mid-Atlantic. However, further north, I did, especially in the second call, the first call, set up the rain snow areas pretty well. I was about 50 miles too far to the east. But hey, things worked out pretty well with that, and New England got the big ice storm that I thought they were going to. Just didn't extend as far south as I thought. So I'd say I'd give that forecast a B- overall, just clearing up just some of those things. Now, while we're looking at the 18Z GFS, and a lot of people are not going to like that, I'm doing it to illustrate a point. This is where the pattern could evolve, and I'm basing this solely on the pattern. The reason why I'm using this model is this run, and maybe I should wait for the 0Z, whatever, is I'm trying to show that it's sniffing out some of these things beforehand, and maybe the 0Z will lose them. That doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to happen. Now, I don't think, given that this solution is going to happen verbatim either, but I think that I like where the model's going. So here we have the initial look with our little storm today. Jet in here, so you get the entrance region here, bam, precipitation comes up. And because of that, we got a mix of snow, sleet, freezing rain, and God knows what else in the Mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. New York City's mostly snow, but that should change as well as the night progresses. So here's our first little system breaking off here. And this is going to be ejecting out and become a possible thing to worry about for the Northeast. Now notice what's happening. Here we've got this ridge sitting in here. It's moving slowly back to the east. We've got all this energy that keeps coming in out off the west coast. Because we have this strong southeast ridge in here, everything basically gets forced up to the north. And we don't get systems to come down, and there's going to be absolutely no phasing that can occur with the little northern branch features that are going by to our north. So as we step on through time here we see the system coming along. Here we are on Friday. I believe, now, it's just a feeling right now, but I believe that we really can't tell what's going to happen yet with the Friday or the Sunday solution. It could trend either north or south at this point. I don't think the models have a proper handle on exactly what's going on. To me, this kind of configuration in here, with this trough so close, I'd expect this to be either further up here closer to this trough or digging further. There's just not enough separation between the ridge in here and the system in here for my liking. So it could go either way. This is, I wouldn't call it a real 50-50 low, but it's a semi-type of block, and you can see there's a little bit of ridging coming back over the top with this system. Although it's not the classic setup you could see. But notice once again, here's the ridge poking its way into Alaska and eventually trending toward western Canada, and here comes the next impulse, but the big piece of energy is coming down behind, and again it's this impulse and this one that are going to lead to our possible Sunday solution, and we're going to look at that in the upper areas in a second. So here it comes out, and this is definitely your classic Miller B. The question is, where does it develop? Again, the GFS is probably not seeing it, but there's probably going to be a bit more southern energy in here. My gut right now says that the vortex may be closer down in here. Maybe a little bit more of this energy will be consolidated. And look, again, while you don't have a 50-50 low, you have a little bit of troughiness, and here's the ridging, here's the negative NAO blocking starting to try to show up. This is not a negative NAO signature, but it's the beginnings of what looks like it wants to maybe become a negative NAO signature. But look where the ridge position is now. Ridge in western Canada. So that should translate to a ridge downstream over eastern Canada, which you see a little bit on this model, but not quite. And noticing now, as you see, these impulses are getting weaker. You're starting to get more of a slide into Southern California. That southern branch is becoming stronger. Why? Here's the vortex up here. That's retrograding, a piece is breaking away, and you're just getting these pieces of energy that are splitting off. And with this ridge, things either have to go over the top or come around the back side. And that is eventually, I believe, going to bring the trough into the east around Christmas Day. Now, that does not necessarily mean a big snowstorm. It means a trough in the east. but let's look at where we get to with the evolution. So here we go with our Christmas storm. Now we're seeing the more classic setup. Bam, 50-50 low in here. Here's our impulse coming out. Again, I think that the GFS is probably not seeing this well. Ridge along the west coast and in western Canada. Ridge off of Alaska is way backed off, so this is a negative EPO situation, which is very good. Actually, it's trending toward neutral. It's slightly negative EPO. But we have this system in here, which I believe will be stronger in the southern branch. You can see here's the beginnings of a couple of northern branch features wanting to dive in. Here's the vortex. This is a much more classic setup. Here's the ridging, here's the blocking, so the confluence zone sets in here and the high is forced to stay blocked in. Now, look at the progression of the GFS here once we get on to Christmas Day, and oops, went past it, and bam, you see that negatively tilted trough, big storm in the east, and everybody's happy, right? Ridge in the midsection of the nation and along the west coast. Here comes the next ridge into the west, but notice things are backing up, coming in further south. That ridge off of Alaska is even further backed up. Here's the ridge in western Canada. Here's the negative NAO block starting, and that could bring us into a very interesting pattern toward the new year. But I'm not going to start getting onto speculations for the new year just yet. All right, let's take a quick look at the surface map here. I'm trying to keep this under 10 minutes tonight. We'll just step through here. Here's our current storm exiting. Here we go. Here's storm number 1 for Friday. This is the 850s, I believe. I actually meant to pull up surface, but that's all right. This still illustrates the point. Major snowstorm going on up here in northern Pennsylvania. Ice just to the south. According to this map, I do not see a big thing for the Mid-Atlantic. More so, again, the Northeast and New England. Not the southern Mid-Atlantic, not even the northern Mid-Atlantic really, but we'll see. There's a lot that can still change in this amount of time. So we step through here. It goes basically barreling almost due east. It's a transfer of energy, very typical with those Miller B-type storms of this variety. Well, they just barrel east like this. And now we can see the next one starting to develop for our Sunday event, and here we go, and here it comes in very far south. This is very heavy snow in D.C. right now. If this were to verify, that's a ½ inch of liquid. So I do think, actually, that this is going to be a major ice storm. D.C., Philly, Baltimore, New York City, Boston. I'd count on a major ice storm with this because even as you see when the low tracks further away, you get that redevelopment of the secondary. This is going to keep the low-level cold air in here. Here's the high sitting up to the north. It is not exiting off the coast. Here's the secondary high coming in behind, and it's just a more favorable solution overall for us to see. This looks like a classic ice storm setup for me, for anywhere from the mid-Atlantic, basically D.C. On northward, and interior New England once again, as usual, gets snow. But here we move on now into Christmas Day. Here, just look at this slide of these brutal highs, and that's occurring because we got this ridging up here. And so we can allow that slide of Arctic air to come across. And so what does that do? That pushes the storm systems further south, makes them more suppressed. Here we go. Here's the setup for our Christmas Day storm, and bam. That would be an intense event. I don't know if it's going to happen exactly that way, but it's certainly a possibility. Now let's take a look at the 18Z GFS versus the 0Z GFS at 500, just to illustrate once again some of the differences that we've seen in the pattern here. Here's the 18Z. Here you can see the system in here, very well drawn out. I'm sorry, 18Z versus 12Z. Well defined, ridge up here, 50-50 low. Now look at the 12Z. Almost no impulse whatsoever in here. 50-50 low is more removed, and everything's just more spread out and muddled. And here's the vortex sitting in here, sort of, and you got this still sort of a slide thing going on. It's just not really. It's a more zonal pattern. It doesn't make as much sense to me. Now, I'm not saying that we couldn't be in this pattern, but it's definitely too early to tell. So basically, the moral of the story is there's a couple of potential ways this could evolve. I think the most likely one is close to the evolution synoptically of the 18Z GFS, but that's not to say that the outcomes will necessarily be the same. Nevertheless, we'll have to watch it, and I'll be giving you updates as we go along. This has been Aaron DeBruin, Vinyl Freak 89.